Welcome. We are back again for step 9, the final step in the Stewardship Well Done journey. And we are welcoming Scott Blakemore and Tim Burkhart and Danette Harper from FMF Financial Services to have a conversation about legacy. You know, legacy is something that really is on all our hearts. You know, what will be beyond this time that I have physically on this earth, and what legacy will I leave behind? Just in the same way that we've inherited things from our family that have come to us from those who've come before us, what will we leave? Amazing to put this in terms, friends, with the idea of the Stewardship Well Done journey, because we typically think about, wanting to make sure that our families are rooted in faith, or, this or that, or, what physical things we might leave behind. But legacy is a bigger picture than that. So let's just start right there. Like, when you think about defining legacy for your clients, the people you minister with, what are some of the ways you find it defined or explained or talked about as you meet with people in your ministry?
I think if you think of the legacy as it's the culmination of the journey. Every step that you've done up to this point plays into the legacy that you leave, because legacy, in short, is just your story, the story of your life, what's going to live on after you are gone. I read a quote about a classic book just yesterday, that a classic is a book that keeps telling a story. It never stops telling it. No matter how many times you read it, there's more to the story. And isn't that how we want people to think about us? That there's more to our story, and we want to tell our story. So even all the way back to step 1, as you prioritized and you budgeted and you saved and you got rid of debt and you listened to God and what he put on your heart, it all just culminates in the story that you're going to leave behind. And there's many, many parts to that. I'm not going to leave an athletic legacy. No, that's not part of me. But I may be able to leave a legacy to my niece and my nephew. My family has a musical legacy to it. And this is just another part of that. We're going to look at our finances and what can you do with your finances to leave a legacy? Because goodness gracious, you've come on a long Stewardship Well Done journey. Let's make sure that it means something. Even after you're gone.
Hopefully all of us have the legacy of knowing that our names were written in the book of life, right? That is the greatest legacy for all of us, to know that is true for us. But then there's that other side of being on this side of heaven and realizing that, our name could go on in a number of different ways. And so having that conversation, being maybe so bold as to throw it out there and say, kind of really would like for people to know about me after I'm gone, a little bit. And I'd like to be associated with these things, my family, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my alma mater that I've been engaged with for all these years, these particular ministries. I have a passion for missions, and to see that these kind of things, I took some time to go to a particular country, and so I invested myself in that. And so that is part of me. And I'd really love to see those things go on into the future.
Remember that legacy is not just after you pass away. There's a lot of things that you can do for your legacy during your lifetime. And we see a lot of people more and more today that would like to see their money at work during their lifetime. So maybe God has blessed them, they have some extra resources, and sure, they could do something with it after they pass away. But maybe they want to give to like Tim said, their alma mater and a scholarship, and be able to engage with the kids that are benefiting from that scholarship, and maybe even mentor them. So you don't have to wait until you die to think about legacy, or for your legacy to be established. That you can do it at any point during your life. It's what is God calling you to do? And it's really fun during the lifetime when other people can see that, and then they get excited about doing things for God as well.
Legacy is the last step in our Stewardship Well Done journey. But I think it was Stephen Covey who said, begin with the end in mind, as one of his highly effective people. And, I'd seen the exercise, write your obituary out before, like write it out now. what do you want people to say about you when you're gone? And that can help speak into what are all the things you should be doing throughout your lifetime so that that is true when you're no longer here. And so while you may not have a lot of resources starting out, you start with priorities, and then what legacy do you want to leave for those priorities? And then all the steps along the way that we've described prior can be helping build your legacy down the road. It isn't something that just happens at the end of your life. It is a culmination of your activity while on this earth. And having an understanding of what that is, again, comes back to the why. Why am I doing these things? Why is this important? Why am I working so hard potentially, or, taking other risks to do things? And why am I reaching out to my kids? Why am I helping do this or that? Legacy is the last step, but it really starts at the very first step with priorities as well.
The thing that I think is so great about this approach is who you are as people in this organization and the why you do what you do. So if we can just be honest, not all financial advisors even consider these kind of things, or they do, but for different motives. When we put on a pair of lenses that look at the world and finances through a Christian lens, we see everything differently. You're talking about blessing and leaving. It's not just the accumulation of wealth. All of this is rooted in holy motives, if we can say this. Why am I doing this? And I just think it's important for our listeners and people watching this video to know that when you come to FMF Financial Services, you are not starting at the same place as just any other financial services provider. When we talk about legacy, when we invest well in our families, there's a promise that comes with that from the Lord, like generations can get blessed. And I think that's part of the legacy too, is what we do with our life. I love, Danette, what you said about how our story is written. How are we constructing the story of our life? And how is God integrated into that? All of this informs how the financial piece becomes a part of that.
Yeah, and for each person, it's just a little bit different. I've never seen I've seen some similar things, but very seldom alike.
Sure.
People are on such different journeys. One story that comes to mind, and if I could share, it's one of the more interesting ones, is I can remember a dear couple that invested in a piece of property. It was a duplex, and they did, very well with the property. It provided them with some significant income during their life. And they came to a place in their life where they decided, we're doing okay. And guess what? Our church, they had a new church that was planted closer to where they lived. And so they actually made that rental property available for the pastor and his family to live on one side. And then they actually launched a church out of the other side of the rental property. And that went on for a period of time. And there was an empty lot across the street from this same duplex. And wouldn't you know, the church was able to secure that empty lot. And next thing you know, they built a whole church across from this duplex. And as the church grew, then they approached us and said, we are thinking of selling this. And so we looked at a plan where they could sell it without having to pay any capital gains tax, because they had depreciated the property and they had a tax issue now to think about. And so we were able to present them a plan, which they just loved, that where they could continue. Actually, at that time, the real estate market had kind of gone down, unfortunately. And we worked with them to rent the property out, pay the family an income. When they couldn't manage it, we managed it for them, which is another option, that sometimes we might explore with someone. But this property became a legacy for them in so many different ways. So we rented it and continued to pay them an income again at some of their later stages in life when they really needed that income. And then finally, a husband had passed away. She came back to us again and said, I'm getting this income again, but I really don't need it. Is there anything else we can do here? And we explored a number of different options. And the option that seemed to appeal to them the best was to say, let's just give it back to the church again. So even though they had given it for use, they had never really fully given the property to the church. And so that last step was actually deeding the property back to the church so that then they could use it. And then they had some staff that started living in the property that helped the church further grow again. And so there are a number of ways that this plays out, but what a legacy to think about how something like that provided for a season, then they were able to give for a season, and then it provided again for another season. And then ultimately it became an ultimate gift to benefit a ministry. And those are kinds of plans that we readily play out. Now, you can open a textbook, you'll never find that plan anywhere because it just plays out by the person and who they were and what was important to them.
That's really neat. So the house has a story, the people have a story, the church has a story, but really it's the story of what God can do when people partner together and share in helping to see a legacy play out as a life well lived. And it goes on from here. You know, we often say, oh, if those walls could talk, you know, if the walls of the house could talk, but the reality is they're speaking, and they're speaking a really great story.